Alright, let's get on to it. This Saturday might generally be Anthony Smith's last fight in the UFC, and that's not an exaggeration. And it's honestly hard to say for someone who's been a staple of the light heavyweight division for years. But here's the thing, he's going up against Dominick Reyes, and while Reyes has his own struggles, this fight feels like one of those career-defining moments for both guys. You don't often get two fighters meeting at such a critical crossroads. It's a fight that could be the end of the road for one or maybe even both, depending on how it plays out. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking, wait, isn't Dominick Reyes the guy who was on a 4-fight losing streak, getting knocked out left and right? And yeah, you're absolutely right. Reyes hit rock bottom not too long ago. He got finished by Jan Blachowicz, then absolutely obliterated by Yuri Prohaska with that spinning elbow, and then Ryan Spann stopped him. That's a tough run, no doubt about it, but here's the thing. Reyes just snapped that streak with a huge, and I mean huge, first round win over Dustin Jacoby. And let's take a second to talk about that win. Sure, Dustin Jacoby isn't a top tier name, he's not going to be headlining pay-per-views anytime soon, but let's not completely discredit Jacoby either. He's a solid kickboxer with decent UFC experience, and Reyes didn't just beat him, he starched him. First round knockout. That's a statement, especially for someone like Reyes, who badly needed this to get his confidence back. And that's really the key here, confidence, coming off of 4 losses. Reyes could have folded mentally, but instead he regrouped it and reminded everyone why he was the one seen as the guy who beat Jon Jones. Speaking of Jon Jones, let's not forget that Reyes gave Jones one of the toughest fights of his career. Some people still believe that Reyes actually beat Jones in that fight. And if you go back and watch it, Reyes put on the performance that had everyone thinking he was the future of the division. And then, well, life came at him fast. He lost the title fight against Blachowicz and things just spiraled from there. But that was Reyes at his peak. And the fact that he was even sniffing that level of performance again after what he's been through says a lot. But you've got to ask yourself, how much of that peak does Reyes still have left? Sure, he's got the win against Jacoby, but it was against a fighter not known for being elite in the division. You've got to wonder how Reyes will handle someone like Smith, who, while declining, still has a lot of tools at his disposal. And maybe more importantly, what happens to Reyes if he loses? A loss here can send him back to square one, and at this point in his career, that might be too much to overcome. The mental side of MMA is brutal, and we've seen fighters crumble after losses like this before. Now let's shift to Anthony Smith. Man, where do we even start? Smith has always been one of those guys who you can't help but root for because of his toughness and resilience. But let's be honest, the signs of decline are there, and they're hard to ignore. He's 2-4 in his last 6 fights, and even those 2 wins come with a big question mark. One of them was a guillotine against Vitor Petrino, an experienced fighter who made a rookie mistake, and then there's his win over Ryan Spann, which was a controversial split decision that many people scored for Spann. But the real concern is Smith's last fight against Roman Dolidze. I don't know how to put it, he looked like he didn't want to be there. The energy, the fight IQ, the grit, it just wasn't there. It felt like watching someone who knows that their best days are behind them, but can't quite bring themselves to walk away. And that's the heartbreaking part about Smith. He's clearly holding on, and you could tell because he still dreams of being a champion one day. But let's be real, that ship has sailed. Because physically, Smith has slowed down a lot. Go back and watch his older fights against guys like Volkan Ozdemir or Shogun Rua, and you can see a completely different fighter. He was sharper, quicker, and more decisive back then. Now he's hesitating, almost like he's second guessing himself. And in this sport, that's a death sentence. Meanwhile, Reyes, even with all the damage he's taken, still looks like an athlete. He still has that explosiveness and that speed that made him such a problem for Jones. That's a huge advantage in this fight, man. Let's pause for a second and think how both men will match up stylistically. If we're going to be honest, the only realistic path to victory for Smith is on the ground. If he can take Reyes down and lock in a submission, he might just pull it off. But that's a big if. Let's not forget that even Jon Jones struggled to keep Reyes down in their fight. Reyes is built like a tank, and he's not the kind of guy you could just drag to the mat and hold there. Smith's grappling is solid, sure, but it's not on the level of someone like John Jones. And let's face it, Smith's wrestling isn't what it used to be either. And on the feet, it's hard to see Smith having much success. Reyes is the better striker, plain and simple. Smith's overhands right is decent, but Reyes isn't going to get caught by someone like that. The guy who knocked out Reyes, Blachowicz, Prohaska, Spans, they're all heavy hitters. Smith doesn't have the same kind of power. And then there's the Reyes leg kicks. This is something that I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about enough. Reyes has really good leg kicks, and Smith is notoriously bad at checking them. If Reyes starts attacking Smith's legs early, it could completely shut down Smith's ability to close the distance. Now, let's take a step back and talk about why this fight feels so emotionally heavy. For Smith, this feels like a last stand. He's 35, which isn't ancient by MMA standards, but his body has taken a ton, and I mean a ton of damage over the years. At some point, you have to ask yourself, is it worth to keep going? And as for Reyes, this is about redemption. A win here doesn't put him back in title contention, but it keeps him relevant. It keeps the dream alive. And honestly, that's more than you could say for Smith at this point. This is one of those fights where, as a fan, you almost don't want to see either guy lose. If Smith wins, you're happy for him, but you feel bad for Reyes because that might be the nail in the coffin for his career. If Reyes wins, you feel bad for Smith because, well, where does he even go from here? It's a lose-lose emotionally, but it's also what makes this fight so fascinating. Both guys are fighting for more than just a paycheck. They're fighting for their careers, their legacy, and maybe even their identity as a fighter. So what happens this Saturday? If I had a bet, I'd say Reyes gets the knockout. He's faster, stronger, and more explosive. Smith might survive for a round or two, but eventually Reyes is going to land something big. And when that happens, I just hope that Smith can take a step back and seriously consider walking away. There's no shame in retiring after everything he's accomplished. But then again, I can see Smith surviving. He's kind of like the Vegeta of MMA. If you're not familiar, Vegeta is one of those characters who can take an insane amount of punishment and somehow keep going. I mean, the guy literally brought Goku enough time to charge the Spirit Bomb against Majin Buu. When it comes to durability, there's no one embodies that more in MMA than Anthony Smith. Still, I just don't see him pulling it off. But anyways guys, I just wanted to take the time to make this video about it because I feel like this fight is pretty interesting and I feel like not a lot of people are talking about it, but those are just my thoughts. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like always guys, I'll see you guys on my next one.